It was almost midnight when Jake finally dragged himself to the 24-hour laundromat on Pine Street. He had been putting off doing laundry for weeks, and now he was down to his last clean shirt. The bright fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as he walked into the nearly empty space, carrying his overflowing laundry basket. The laundromat was one of those places that looked exactly the same whether it was day or night. White walls, rows of washing machines, and that familiar smell of detergent mixed with bleach. Usually, Jake would be the only person there at this hour. Maybe one or two other college students who had also procrastinated their way into late-night laundry duty. But tonight was different. She was sitting in one of the plastic chairs near the back, and Jake noticed her immediately. Not because she was particularly striking, but because something about her presence made the whole room feel different. She was tall and pale, with long silver hair that seemed to catch the light in an unusual way. Her clothes looked ordinary enough, jeans and a simple white top. But there was something about the way she moved that made Jake think she was from somewhere far away. Jake loaded his clothes into the washing machine, trying not to stare. He had lived in this college town for 3 years and thought he knew most of the faces around here, especially the ones who did laundry at midnight, but he had never seen her before. The washing machine started its cycle, and Jake settled into a chair with his phone, planning to scroll through social media for the next 30 minutes. That's when everything went wrong. A loud grinding noise came from his machine, followed by a series of clicks and then complete silence. Jake looked up to see soapy water starting to leak from the bottom of the machine. His heart sank as he realized what had happened. The machine had broken down mid-cycle, and his clothes were now sitting in a pool of dirty, soapy water. No, 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 Jake muttered, rushing over to the machine. He tried pressing different buttons, but nothing worked. The digital display showed an error code that meant absolutely nothing to him. His clothes were soaked, covered in soap, and completely unwearable. Jake looked around the laundromat helplessly. There was no staff member to help him, and he didn't have enough quarters to start over in a different machine. Plus, his clothes were too soapy to just transfer to another washer. He needed to rinse them first, but the only sinks in the place were tiny and clearly not meant for washing clothes. That's when he heard a gentle voice behind him. "Excuse me, are you having trouble with your washing?" Jake turned around to find the mysterious woman standing just a few feet away, up close. Her eyes were the most unusual shade of blue he had ever seen, almost like looking into deep water. Her voice had a slight accent that he couldn't quite place. "Yeah, the machine broke down," Jake said, feeling embarrassed about the situation. "My clothes are all soapy and wet, and I have no idea what to do with them." She smiled, and there was something about her expression that made Jake feel like she understood his frustration completely. "I can help you with that," she said. "Washing is something I know very well. It is, how do you say, my specialty." Jake looked at her curiously. There was something in her tone that suggested she meant more than just knowing how to operate a washing machine. But he was desperate, and she seemed kind enough. "I live just upstairs," she continued, pointing toward a door at the back of the laundromat that Jake had never noticed before. "I have everything needed to clean your clothes properly. Better than these machines, actually." Jake hesitated for a moment. He didn't usually accept help from strangers, especially not at midnight, but something about her made him feel safe. Maybe it was the way she spoke, calm and confident. Or maybe it was just that he was out of other options. "Are you sure it's not too much trouble?" he asked. "Not at all," she replied, her smile growing wider. "In my culture, helping with washing is considered very important. It is much more than just cleaning clothes." Jake wasn't sure what she meant by that, but he was too tired and frustrated to ask for clarification. He gathered his wet, soapy clothes from the broken machine and followed her toward the back door. As they walked, Jake noticed that other people in the laundromat were watching them with curious expressions. An elderly man folding towels near the dryers looked up with raised eyebrows. A woman reading a magazine glanced over with interest. It was as if they all recognized the pale woman. and were surprised to see her talking to someone. "I'm Jake, by the way," he said as they reached the door. "You can call me Luna," she replied, pulling out a key that looked like it was made of some kind of unusual metal. "And Jake, I think you should know that where I come from, accepting help with washing is considered a great honor. It means you trust the person completely." Jake nodded, not fully understanding what she meant but appreciating her willingness to help. He was just grateful that someone was solving his problem. Luna opened the door to reveal a narrow staircase leading upward. The walls were painted in soft, calming colors, and Jake could smell something pleasant, like flowers and fresh rain, as they climbed the stairs. Luna continued talking. "Most people today have forgotten how important washing really is," she said, her voice echoing slightly in the stairwell. "They think it's just about removing dirt and stains. But washing is about much more than that. It's about renewal, about starting fresh, about connecting with others." Jake found her words interesting, though he wasn't sure he understood what she meant. To him, washing clothes had always been just a chore, something he did when he absolutely had to. But Luna spoke about it like it was an art form, or maybe even something sacred. They reached the top of the stairs, and Luna opened another door. Jake stepped into her apartment and immediately felt like he had entered a completely different world. The space was unlike anything he had ever seen, filled with soft lighting and unusual decorations that he couldn't quite identify. "Welcome to my home," Luna said, her eyes sparkling with what looked like excitement. "Now, let me show you how washing is really done." As Jake looked around the extraordinary apartment, he began to realize that accepting Luna's help might have been about much more than just getting his clothes clean. Something told him that this night was going to change everything, though he had no idea how right he was. Jake stepped into Luna's apartment and felt his breath catch in his throat. The place was nothing like what he had expected. Instead of a typical college apartment with cheap furniture and pizza boxes, Luna's home looked like something from a dream. The walls were covered in smooth, polished stones that seemed to glow softly in the dim light. Crystals of different sizes and colors hung from the ceiling, creating tiny rainbows that danced across the room. There were plants everywhere, but not the kind Jake recognized from the campus greenhouse. These had leaves that shimmered like metal and flowers that seemed to pulse with their own light. "This is incredible," Jake said, setting his bundle of wet clothes on the floor. "How long have you lived here?" Luna moved gracefully through the space, lighting what looked like candles, but gave off a much brighter, cleaner light than any candle Jake had ever seen. "Time works differently for my people," she said with a mysterious smile. "We measure it in experiences, not days or years." Jake wasn't sure what that meant, but he was too amazed by his surroundings to ask for clarification. In the center of the room was a large, circular basin made of what looked like smooth black stone. It was filled with water that seemed to move on its own, creating gentle ripples even though nothing was touching it. "Is that where you want me to put my clothes?" Jake asked, pointing to the basin. Luna laughed, a sound like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "Oh no, Jake, this is much more special than that. What you're looking at is a cleansing pool that has been in my family for generations. It's not just for washing clothes, it's for washing everything." She walked over to a wooden shelf that was carved with symbols Jake had never seen before. The symbols seemed to shift and change when he wasn't looking directly at them, like optical illusions that move on their own. "In my culture," Luna continued, taking down several small bottles filled with different colored liquids, "washing is one of the most important things we do. It's not just about getting clean. It's about removing negative energy, connecting with others, and preparing for new beginnings." Jake watched as she poured the liquids into the basin. The water immediately began to change color, shifting from clear to deep blue to silver to gold. The air filled with a scent that reminded Jake of morning rain and fresh flowers, but somehow more intense and alive. "Where exactly are you from?" Jake asked, fascinated by the elaborate process he was witnessing. Luna paused, her hands hovering over the basin. "My people come from a place that exists between places. We travel through Spaces that most humans don't even know exist. We've been watching your world for a very long time, learning about your customs and trying to understand how you live. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. You're saying you're not from Earth? I'm saying that Earth is just one of many worlds, and my people have learned to move between them, Luna replied calmly. We're not here to harm anyone. We're here to learn, to teach, and to help when we can. She gestured for Jake to come closer to the basin. The water was now glowing with a soft, warm light that seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. Jake could feel heat radiating from it, even though he was standing several feet away. This washing ritual, Luna explained, is how my people create bonds with others. When someone accepts our help with cleansing, they're accepting something much deeper than just getting their clothes clean. They're opening themselves to connection, to understanding, to growth. Jake looked down at his soggy, soap-covered clothes and then back at the magnificent basin. So when I agreed to let you help me wash my clothes, I was actually agreeing to some kind of alien ritual. Luna's expression grew serious. Not alien, Jake, different. And yes, you were agreeing to much more than you realized. But I want you to know that you can still choose to leave. The ritual only works if both people participate willingly. Jake considered this. Part of him wanted to grab his clothes and run back to his dorm room to pretend this whole strange encounter had never happened, but another part of him, a bigger part, was curious about what would happen if he stayed. What does the ritual actually involve? He asked. Luna moved to another shelf and began taking down more items. There were smooth stones, dry plants that Jake didn't recognize, and what looked like small metal chimes that made beautiful sounds when they touched each other. First, we prepare the water with elements from both our worlds, she said, adding the stones to the basin. Then we cleanse your clothes using methods that my people have perfected over thousands of years. But the most important part is that we both participate. I don't just wash your clothes for you. We do it together. Jake watched as she arranged the items around the basin in a specific pattern. Everything she did seemed purposeful and meaningful, like she was following instructions that had been passed down through generations. Why is it so important that we do it together? Jake asked. Luna looked up at him with those deep blue eyes. Because true cleansing requires trust. When you allow someone to help you wash away what no longer serves you, you're being completely vulnerable with them. And when I help you, I'm sharing the wisdom and energy of my people with you. She stood up and walked over to Jake, placing her hands gently on his shoulders. The ritual will change you, Jake, not in a scary way, but in a way that opens your mind to possibilities you never imagined. You'll see the world differently. You'll understand connections that most humans miss. Jake felt a strange tingling sensation where her hands touched him. It wasn't unpleasant, but it was unlike anything he had ever experienced. It felt like energy was flowing between them, warm and alive. Are you ready to begin? Luna asked softly. Jake looked around the extraordinary apartment, at the glowing basin, at Luna's kind but mysterious face. He thought about his boring life, his routine classes, his predictable future. Maybe it was time for something different. Yes, he said, surprising himself with how certain he sounded. I'm ready, Luna smiled. And for just a moment, Jake could have sworn he saw stars reflected in her eyes. Then let's begin your real education, Jake. Let me show you what washing can really do. Luna moved around the glowing basin with practiced grace, her hands creating patterns in the air that left faint trails of light. Jake watched in amazement as she began to hum a melody that seemed to make the water respond, swirling and gentle spirals that followed the rhythm of her voice. Give me your shirt first, Luna said, extending her hand toward Jake. We'll start with the piece that's closest to your heart. Jake hesitated for a moment, then pulled off his damp, soap-covered shirt and handed it to her. As soon as Luna's fingers touched the fabric, something extraordinary happened. The shirt began to glow with the same soft light as the water in the basin. How are you doing that? Jake asked, his voice filled with wonder. Luna smiled as she lowered the shirt into the basin. My people have what you might call a different relationship with energy. We can see it, feel it, and work with it in ways that most humans have forgotten how to do. As she moved the shirt through the water, Jake noticed that the soap wasn't just washing away. It was dissolving into sparkles of light that danced on the surface of the water. Before disappearing completely, the shirt itself seemed to be changing, becoming brighter and somehow more alive. "This is impossible," Jake whispered, unable to look away from the miraculous sight. "Only if you believe that what you see in your everyday world is all there is," Luna replied. "But Jake, your world is just one layer of reality. There are many others, and my people have learned to move between them." She lifted the shirt from the basin, and Jake gasped. It wasn't just clean. It looked brand new, as if it had never been worn. The colors were more vibrant, the fabric softer, and there was something about it that made Jake feel like it was glowing with positive energy. "Where exactly do your people come from?" Jake asked. Accepting the transformed shirt with trembling hands, Luna paused in her work, looking up at him with those deep blue eyes. "We come from what we call the in-between. It's a place that exists in the spaces between your dimensions, between your thoughts, between your heartbeats. We've been traveling through these spaces for longer than your civilization has existed." Jake felt his mind struggling to process this information. "So you're saying there are other dimensions, and you can travel between them?" "Not just travel," Luna said, beginning to work on his jeans. "We live there. We've built cities in the spaces between spaces, created communities that span multiple realities. And we've been watching Earth for a very long time, learning about humanity, trying to understand why you've lost touch with the energy that connects all things." As she spoke, Luna's hands moved through the water with increasing intensity. The basin began to glow brighter, and Jake could feel warmth radiating from it, warming his entire body even though he was standing several feet away. "Why have you been watching us?" Jake asked, fascinated despite his confusion. Luna's expression grew serious. "Because your species is at a crossroads. You've developed incredible technology, but you've forgotten about the deeper connections that bind all living things together. You stopped believing in magic and mystery, in the possibility that there's more to existence than what you can see and touch." She lifted his jeans from the basin, and like his shirt, they had been transformed. Not only were they perfectly clean, but they seemed to fit him better somehow, as if they had been tailored specifically for his body. "My people believe that every species in the universe has the potential to evolve beyond their physical limitations," Luna continued. "But humans seem to have gotten stuck. You've forgotten how to sense energy, how to communicate without words, how to recognize the connections that link every living thing." Jake put on his transformed shirt and immediately felt different. It was as if the fabric itself was alive, responding to his movements and somehow making him feel more confident and aware. "So you're here to help us remember?" Jake asked. "Some of us are," Luna nodded. "Others are here to learn from you, and some are here to prepare for what's coming next." "What's coming next?" Jake felt a chill despite the warmth radiating from the basin. Luna paused, her hands still moving through the water. "Change, Jake, big change. Your world is about to go through a transformation that will affect every person on Earth. Some will be ready for it, and some won't. That's why we're here, to help prepare those who are willing to open their minds to new possibilities." She began working on his remaining clothes, each piece emerging from the basin completely transformed. As she worked, Jake noticed that he was beginning to feel different too. Colors seemed more vivid, sounds more layered, and he could sense emotions and energy in ways he had never experienced before. "What's happening to me?" Jake asked, looking down at his hands, which seemed to be glowing with a faint light. "The washing ritual doesn't just clean your clothes," Luna explained. "It awakens abilities that have been sleeping inside you. Every human has these gifts, but most have forgotten how to use them. The ritual helps you remember." Jake felt a strange tingling sensation spreading through his body. It wasn't painful, but it was intense, like every cell in his body was waking up after a long sleep. "This is why we choose our partners carefully," Luna continued. "Not everyone is ready for this kind of awakening, but something about you told me that you were different, that you were ready to see beyond the ordinary world." As she spoke, Jake realized that he could sense things about Luna that he hadn't noticed before. He could feel her emotions, her intentions, even glimpses of her memories. It was overwhelming, but also incredibly beautiful. The ritual creates a permanent connection between us, Luna said, her voice taking on a more serious tone. You'll carry part of my people's energy with you always, and we'll carry part of yours. This isn't something that can be undone. Jake looked at his reflection in the surface of the basin and saw that his eyes had changed. They were still brown, but now they held depths that hadn't been there before, as if he was seeing the world through new eyes. I can feel everything differently, Jake said in wonder. It's like I've been living in black and white my whole life, and now I can see color. Luna smiled, and Jake could feel her joy radiating through their new connection. That's exactly what it's like. Welcome to the real world, Jake. Welcome to the universe as it truly is. Luna stepped back from the basin and looked at Jake with an expression that mixed pride and concern. Now comes the final part of the ritual, she said softly. This is where everything changes completely. Jake felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. The transformation he had already experienced was incredible. But something in Luna's tone told him that what was coming next would be even more intense. What do I need to do? Jake asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Luna gestured toward the glowing basin. You need to enter the water yourself. The ritual isn't complete until both participants have been cleansed by the same sacred waters. It's about trust, vulnerability, and complete acceptance. Jake looked at the basin, which now seemed larger than it had before. The water was glowing brighter, swirling in patterns that seemed to respond to his heartbeat. He could feel energy radiating from it, warm and inviting, but also somehow powerful beyond his understanding. Will it hurt? Jake asked. Luna shook her head. No, but it will change you in ways you can't imagine. Once you enter the water, you'll never be the same person who walked into that laundromat. Tonight, you'll see the world differently, feel things differently, understand connections that most humans never discover. Jake took a deep breath and began to remove his shoes and socks. The transformed clothes felt different against his skin, as if they were alive and responding to his movements. As he prepared to step into the basin, Luna began to move around the room, lighting more of the unusual candles and adjusting the crystals that hung from the ceiling. My people have been performing this ritual for thousands of years, Luna explained. As she worked, we use it to welcome new members into our community, to create bonds between different species, and to help others discover their true potential. Jake placed one foot into the warm water and immediately felt a shock of energy travel up his leg. It wasn't painful, but it was intense, like being struck by lightning made of pure joy. The water seemed to recognize him, swirling around his foot in welcoming spirals. That's it, Luna encouraged. Let the water accept you. As Jake lowered himself into the basin, the water rose to meet him, somehow accommodating his full body even though the basin had seemed much smaller from outside. The liquid was unlike anything he had ever experienced, warmer than a bath, lighter than air, and alive with energy that made every cell in his body tingle with excitement. Luna began to chant in a language that Jake didn't recognize but somehow understood. The words seemed to bypass his ears and speak directly to his soul, telling him about journeys through space and time, about connections that span galaxies, about the true nature of consciousness itself. As she chanted, Jake felt his awareness expanding. He could suddenly sense not just Luna's emotions and thoughts, but the feelings of every living thing around him. He could feel the plants in the apartment reaching toward the light, the small insects moving through the walls, even the thoughts and dreams of people sleeping in buildings blocks away. This is incredible, Jake gasped, though he wasn't sure if he spoke the words out loud or if Luna simply felt them. Through their connection, you're beginning to experience the universe as it really is, Luna replied, her voice seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Most humans live their entire lives, seeing only a tiny fraction of what's actually happening around them. But you're awakening to the full spectrum of existence. The water around Jake began to change color, shifting from gold to silver to deep blue to colors that didn't have names in any human language. With each color change, Jake felt different aspects of his consciousness awakening. He could see energy patterns flowing through the air, hear the music that planets made as they moved through space, and feel the emotions of beings living in dimensions he had never imagined. My people call this the Great Awakening, Luna explained, her form seeming to shimmer and change as Jake's perception shifted. It's what happens when a consciousness expands beyond the limitations of its physical form. You're becoming something more than human, Jake, but you're also becoming more human than you've ever been. Jake felt tears streaming down his face, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of overwhelming joy and wonder. For the first time in his life, he felt truly alive, truly connected to everything around him. I can feel everything, Jake whispered. The trees, the stars, the people in the city. It's all connected. We're all part of the same thing, Luna smiled. And Jake could feel her happiness radiating through the water like warm sunshine. Now, you understand why we choose our partners so carefully. Not everyone is ready for this level of awareness. But you were ready, Jake. You were ready to see beyond the illusion of separation. As the ritual reached its peak, Jake felt his old self dissolving away like soap in water. All his fears, his doubts, his limiting beliefs about what was possible, they all washed away, leaving behind something pure and powerful and infinitely connected to the universe around him. What happens now? Jake asked, though he already knew the answer. Now you become a bridge, Luna replied, a connection between my people and yours. You'll help others who are ready to make this journey, and you'll help prepare humanity for the changes that are coming. Jake felt the water beginning to calm, the intense energy settling into a gentle, constant flow. He was still himself, but he was also something more, a being capable of perceiving and interacting with multiple dimensions of reality. I understand now, Jake said, standing up in the basin. This was never just about washing clothes. It was about washing away everything that was keeping me from being who I really am. Luna nodded, her eyes shining with pride and joy. Welcome to your true life, Jake. Welcome to the universe. 3 weeks had passed since that incredible night in Luna's apartment, and Jake's life had become something he never could have imagined. Every morning, he woke up feeling more alive than he had ever felt before. Colors were brighter, sounds were richer, and he could sense the emotions and energy of everyone around him. At first, it had been overwhelming. Walking across campus, Jake could feel the stress of students worried about exams, the loneliness of people eating by themselves, and the joy of friends reuniting after class. It was like having a radio that picked up every emotional frequency in the area, and he had to learn how to tune it so he wouldn't be overwhelmed by the constant stream of feelings. Luna had been patient with him, visiting his dorm room every few days to help him understand his new abilities. She taught him how to create mental barriers to protect himself from negative emotions, how to send calming energy to people who needed it, and how to recognize others who might be ready for their own awakening. Remember, Luna had told him during one of their sessions, these abilities aren't just for you. They're tools to help others and to prepare for what's coming. Jake had asked her many times what exactly was coming, but Luna's answers were always vague. She spoke of a great shift that would affect all of humanity, a time when people would need to choose between staying in their limited understanding of reality or opening themselves to something much bigger. One afternoon, Jake was sitting in the student union when he noticed a girl at a nearby table who seemed to be glowing with a faint light. She was hunched over her textbooks, looking stressed and tired. But there was something about her energy that felt different from other students. Jake approached her table carefully. "Excuse me," he said softly. "Are you okay? You seem like you're having a tough day." The girl looked up, and Jake saw that her eyes held the same depth that he had seen in Luna's eyes that first night. "I'm fine," she said, but Jake could feel that she was lying. Through his enhanced perception, he could sense that she was struggling with something much deeper than schoolwork. "I know this might sound strange," Jake continued, "but I can sense that you're dealing with something unusual, something that other people might not understand. The girl's expression changed, and Jake felt a spark of recognition pass between them. "How did you know?" she whispered. "Because I've been through something similar," Jake replied, "and I know someone who can help." That evening, Jake brought the girl, whose name was River, to meet Luna. As soon as they entered the apartment above the laundromat, Jake could feel the same energy he had experienced weeks before. Luna greeted River with the same knowing smile she had given Jake. "Another one ready for the journey," Luna said, looking at River with those deep blue eyes. "I can feel it in your energy. You've been sensing things that others can't see, haven't you?" River nodded, tears forming in her eyes. "I thought I was going crazy. I've been seeing lights around people, hearing thoughts that aren't mine, feeling emotions that belong to strangers. I was about to check myself into the campus health center." Luna laughed gently. "You're not crazy, dear one. You're awakening. Your consciousness is expanding beyond the normal human range, and you're starting to perceive reality as it truly is." Over the following weeks, Jake watched as River went through her own transformation. Luna performed the washing ritual with her, and Jake assisted, helping to guide River through the same overwhelming but beautiful experience he had gone through. As River emerged from the glowing basin, Jake felt a profound sense of purpose. He was no longer just someone who had been changed by an extraordinary experience. He was becoming a guide, helping others make the same journey he had taken. "This is what I'm supposed to do," Jake realized one evening as he sat with Luna on the roof of the apartment building, looking up at stars that now seemed to pulse with their own consciousness. "I'm supposed to help people wake up," Luna nodded. "You're becoming what we call a bridge walker, someone who can move between the ordinary world and the expanded reality, helping others make the transition when they're ready." Jake had discovered that there were others like him scattered throughout the college town, people who had been chosen by Luna's people for the washing ritual, who had awakened to their true potential and were now helping to prepare humanity for whatever was coming next. There was David, a professor who had been awakened 2 years earlier, and was now subtly incorporating consciousness-expanding concepts into his psychology classes. There was Maya, a local artist whose paintings somehow helped people feel more connected to the universe. And there was Tom, who worked at the campus bookstore and had a gift for recommending exactly the right books to people who were ready to begin questioning their understanding of reality. Together, they formed a quiet network of awakened individuals, each working in their own way to help others open their minds to new possibilities. They met regularly in Luna's apartment, sharing their experiences and learning more about the cosmic community they had become part of. "Your planet is approaching a critical point," Luna explained during one of their gatherings. "Humanity is about to face challenges that will require a completely different way of thinking. Those who remain trapped in the old patterns of fear and separation will struggle, but those who have awakened to their true nature will be able to help guide others through the transition." Jake learned that Luna's people weren't the only ones preparing for the shift. There were awakened beings from many different worlds and dimensions, all working together to help various species evolve beyond their current limitations. "We're all part of the same cosmic family," Luna told them. "Every conscious being in the universe is connected, and we all have a responsibility to help each other grow and evolve." As the weeks turned into months, Jake became more skilled at recognizing people who were ready for awakening. He could sense it in their energy and the way they looked at the world with questions in their eyes, and their openness to possibilities beyond what they had been taught. One evening, as Jake was helping another student through their first experience with the washing ritual, he realized how much he had changed since that night when his washing machine had broken down. He was no longer the same person who had dragged his laundry to the 24-hour laundromat. He had become something more, a bridge between worlds, a guide for others seeking truth, and a part of something much larger than himself. "Thank you," he said to Luna as they cleaned up after the ritual, "for choosing me, for trusting me, for showing me who I really am." Luna smiled, her eyes sparkling with the light of distant stars. "I didn't choose you, Jake. You chose yourself. You chose to be open, to trust, to grow. All I did was provide the opportunity." Jake looked around the apartment that had become his second home. at the friends who had become his spiritual family, and at the future that stretched out before him filled with infinite possibilities. He had come here to wash his clothes, but he had ended up washing away everything that had been limiting him, and now he was helping others do the same.